Hello and welcome. I'm Psychic Medium Roberto, and I hope you're well today. Alright, so I'm going to be looking at the missing persons case of Madalina Cojocari, who was 11 years old at the time of her disappearance. And I'm just going to put a disclaimer up front here that unfortunately this is not going to end well. And I believe in this case we have the same situation that we found with a Quentin Simon. Alright, let me take a moment to focus and tune in. If you'd like to engage with the channel, please hit the subscribe button and the notifications icon so you can be alerted to new uploads. Alright, so let's start off with who was Madalina Cojocari. She was born on April the 11th, 2001. And straight off the bat, I would just say, a 9-life path. I have a great sense that this person would have gone on to being a musician or related in the musician arts, either as a performer or playing the piano. But I definitely have a sense that there was a lot of music interest around her, and she would have ended up playing music. Or at least in the arts field, but related to music in some way or form. Okay, so now being born on April 11th, 2001, we have the following key numbers: the number 4, the 11, 2, and the 3. All right, so I'm just going to speak again, and I spoke about this in the Augustus reading, the boy in the box reading, that you have a case here where a young child has a significant 4 in her name, and that lends herself on the negative side to abuse, particularly physical abuse or sexual abuse, perpetrated in this case by an adult. And we're going to see the similar numbers in the stepfather, who is Christopher Palmita, and we'll get to him soon enough, as well as the mother, and who is Madalina Cojocari. Now, in this case, in society, we always talk about trying to end the cycle of abuse. So I'm going to TikTok between the parents and Madalina, so I just want to highlight something around these 4s. So if we look at Diana, she is predominantly 11, 2 and 4s. Now, if we look at Madalina, she has 11 2s and 4. And if we look at Christopher, the stepfather, 3s, 4s, and 8s. And that, of course, is pinging on Madalina's 4s and 3s. Now, this is a case, this would be a classic case of the 4s, right? So I can say that Diana, in her growing up and going through life, she would have encountered a lot of abuse. There would have been physical, sexual abuse perpetrated against her. And that's again where the cycle continued from her previous family. But with her, she would have encountered abuse. And of course, then she is prone to be abused even as an adult if she hasn't dealt with her past experiences with her 4s. Now, if you look at Christopher, when you have a male figure with 3s and 4s and 8s, we are looking for trouble here. That 3 speaks about abuse. Now, if you look at the 3 on Madalina, her 3 at her age would be about creativity, would be about community, would be about family, would be about, including the arts. She was a free spirit in many ways. But had she grown up, she would have been really free within her music, within her arts. And, unfortunately, when she's 11, which is also the 11, 2, starts pinging against the mother, and with her 4s and 3s, pings against Christopher. Okay, so in my opinion, she was living in a very abusive environment where we can say that the mother would be prone to alcohol, drug abuse, but also abuse from her partner. Now, and that would be Christopher. Now, with Christopher, we have a situation where very controlling, very abusive. Now, males with 4s in their names or date of birth and are in the presence of a young girl with 4s tends to create problems. Okay, and I would say that the abuse that Madalina would have received came both from her mother as well as the stepfather. Okay, now I've written down a few questions here to guide me in answering I feel the most pertinent questions, and that is, the first question I have here is, what happened to Madalina? Now, I haven't written down the dates that she was supposedly went missing and then reported missing, because of course the outcome at the moment is we know she's been missing, and over a course of time that her disappearance was not reported at all. Now, what happened to Madalina? I believe Madalina was murdered the night before, or the night of where she was last seen, or thereabout, within the 1 day, 24 hours. I believe she was strangled by her stepfather, and I have an image of both his hands around her neck. Okay, I'm going to repeat that. She was murdered, I believe, by her stepfather by strangulation. And why did this happen? I believe on this incident, or during this situation of abuse, I believe the message I received was he went too far. He went too far and had to murder her. And the next question I have is, where is Madalina? And I believe he put her in a dumpster. Now, he would have put her in the, I don't know how they would do it in the States, but their weekly pickup routine. And he would have put her in the dumpster to be dumped in the local landfill. That's why I believe we have a similar situation here with Quentin Simon, in this Quentin Simon case. Right. Where was Madalina's mom during the time of the murder? Now, I believe the answer I received was she would have been somewhat intoxicated at the time, and I believe she was under the influence of alcohol as well as narcotics. And I believe at the time of the murder she may have been in the next room, half out, half in, passed out, but I do believe there would have been some audio or noise that she would have picked up and heard on. And again, she would have been aware of this abuse going on with her daughter. But because she was a victim of abuse herself, whether she was compromised in whether Christopher was paying the bills or whatever the story is, she would allow it to a certain extent. And I know that sounds very weird, but I believe she was allowing Christopher to fulfill his other needs. And we have a similar case in the, if you guys don't know about the Van Rooyen case here in South Africa, where a number of young girls had been abducted and have never been seen since. And we have the same situation there where the wife was allowing the husband to cause harm and abuse young children. And the wife in that case was fully aware of what was going on. She didn't like sex at all, and she would allow her husband, Gert Van Rooyen, to abduct and abuse girls to satisfy their sexual urges. Now we have the same case here with Diana and Christopher. She was enabling Christopher, whether she knew it in the beginning or not, but she certainly was aware of what was happening with Madalina, and as much as guilty as Christopher in the murder of her own daughter. I believe the police need to look at the following locations, or at least on the premises for evidence. I believe the police need to look on evidence in terms of how they discarded her body. Would either be in the bathroom, the bath area, and I would also look if there's I haven't looked at the location of the house per se, but there might have been work done in a shed or in some kind of closed environment where I believe there was dismemberment going on. And I know that's quite hectic, but I believe she was dismembered and placed in the local street dumpster, and that dumpster was then taken to a local landfill. Now, the question is, will we find Madalina or her remains? And I believe the answer is yes. But of course, we need to start looking very quickly. But I do believe she may be in the local fill site or dump site. So the question I asked as well, did her mom help with disposing of the body? And I believe the answer is no. She might not have had a physical helping hand in disposing of the body, but she was certainly aware of the situation. And the question asked, was her mom part of the discussion as to what was going to be done to Madalina? And I believe the answer is yes. Now, we must understand, and this is no excuse for these two adults' involvement in what they planned and did with her, but when you're dealing with the cycle abuse, I believe Diana would have been under full control of Christopher in either as a monetary situation, emotional, and I believe probably emotional and monetary. She would have been dependent on Christopher. But I do believe she was involved with the discussion around how they're going to remove or get rid of Madalina's body. And again, I'll just recap. It's no excuse, but when you look at these three people, and in particular the mother and the stepfather, we have turmoil of abuse. Abuse was like normal, prominent, every day, every week, every month. And this would have been going on for a while, I would imagine. Yeah. And you know, when you see those 8s with Christopher, that talks about violence, like not violence, but extreme violence, extreme cases, like if you had to dismember a body, that would be extreme violence perpetrated on the body of another person. And that's what we have here with Christopher. He definitely has the capability of being that violent. All right, so with those 3s, we see control issues, abuse issues. The 4 talks about abuse issues, directly relates to the young girl, Madalina, which also has the 4s. And with those 8s, we talk in extreme violence perpetrated against a human body. Here we have the same situation as Quentin Simon, where the mother, intoxicated on alcohol, drugs, capable of breaking the law with that 11-2, and with the 4s just speaks about the cycle of abuse. And you know, when people make those decisions, they have the decisions to go the right way or the wrong way. And of course, with the dependency on Christopher, she would oblige with his needs or other needs, as it were. So I would just say to the police, look in the local dump site, full site, and unfortunately that's where we will find Madalina. And I hope these 2 adults get what's coming to them. And again, we have a young child who is placed in a very abusive household, perpetrated by 2 abusers, and not a good ending, unfortunately. And I do believe she had such great potential. Like with most of these kids, their life is in front of them and they have huge potential to make a significant difference in their local communities and in the world. Thank you for watching. Please leave your comments and suggestions below. I would love to hear from you. And I will see you in the next one. Stay safe and stay alert.